3:02 p.m. on July 3rd, 2024. I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. And since it's a virtual meeting, first thing we'll do is have the board members go around and announce their presence. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Keith Constantine present.
Diana Hook present. Oh, I'm sorry, Julie, you're next.
That's okay. Julie is present.
Diana Hook present.
All right, so we don't have any other issues that were not anticipated 48 hours in advance. This is a special meeting. The one topic is to continue our review of farm road homes. And in particular, our plan was to draft the questions to submit to DEP to help resolve some of the things that we were grappling with at the last meeting. I reached out to other DEP regional offices as I was trying to write the questions to get some input on what they thought about this general topic. And in leaving messages during holiday week, several of them forwarded my message to Claire Golden, who then called me. So we have some information. Maybe it's not everything that we want, but we do have some information, and so we can share that. Just got it. I don't even remember when, not long ago, or something like that. So maybe that's the place to start. And let's see if I can. Actually, Jessica, do you have the full email? Because I shut down the email to, again, add to my bandwidth here.
Yes, I do. Would you like me to share my screen?
Yeah, I think that might be the best. I have excerpts of it, but maybe we just want to share all of it.
If you share the email with us, that's a little to forward it to Bob and me, so we can.
Yeah, well, let's just do this. I can't do that right now because I shut down my email.
So Jessica has it.
Can you all see my screen?
All right, so there are a couple parts that are specific to this. Trying to think of which one to start with. Hold on. All right, I actually think farther down, the last large paragraph, if that can be blown up, I don't know if other people are able to read it. I can read it because I know what it says, so I'm not sure.
Daryl,
Has this been Deshang asked if you can forward it to us so we can read it on our own screens?
Hard to see, it's too small. I can blow up a little bit better. So the state size is not as good as it used to be.
Sure, let me do that now. You should all have it.
Yeah, by email, Jessica?
To your emails.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so maybe I'll wait for just a moment until you've received that.
Yeah, I will say that, and I don't want to make a big deal about this because I want to have a positive conversation today, but we did agree that we would work together to craft our outreach to DEP, and that, you know, in the interest of kind of fairness, that we would kind of huddle and come up with what we both sides agreed would be the questions to DEP, and obviously, unfortunately, that has not been the case. But we'll just put that aside for now.
And pardon my interest in trying to make it a more effective and brief session, because our idea was that this wouldn't take all that long. And I found it difficult to write it up without getting a little bit more information. And that's why I called other regions, so that we would still be going with questions to Claire. But that's not how it worked out.
hang on one second. Jessica, have you forwarded the email on to the rest of the board? Because the rest of us also might have trouble seeing the tiny print.
Yes, you should have it.
Perfect. Thank you.
I got it.
To see if to see if the whole board has it in front of them, because I suspect we all need to zoom things in. Why don't we
And
just make
frankly-
sure that everyone has a moment to pause and read it, because, I mean, it looks like this just came in within the last hour or two, and so I don't think that everyone can stop and read it that fast, so let's just pause and do that.
And this does not preclude us writing other questions.
Yes, this was also, Bob, for my own clarification and understanding so that we could facilitate a positive conversation in crafting questions for her.
Yeah, I mean, I've read it over. Do you want me to speak to it, Daryl, or would you like to kind of go
No, I
first?
was going to ask if the board members have any questions first, and then we'll get to any of your comments. Any board members? Or-
So in my reading of this email, it's bringing us back to where we started, which is it looks like it's fairly clear when there is any kind of disagreement in terms of the observations, which it was agreed in the field, and then that kind of changed later on after the fact, but to go back into the field and to use a soil evaluation. And yes, a sieve analysis can be done, but it does not supplement or it does not preclude the results of the soil evaluation, is what she's saying. And so I feel like this takes us back to where we started, which is I think that we should again offer to the applicant, if they want to go back out, and the areas we can discuss as a board, the specific areas that we're concerned about, to dig 2 more deep holes. Again, following what Title V says in terms of the methodology for the observation. I would continue to suggest that we would use a previously uninvolved certified soil evaluator, because I think we need to have that present given the history of this project. And you know, I think that's an option if we want to continue down that road. I'd like to give that to the applicant as a choice, but of course it's their prerogative to take it or not to take it. But that's when in reading this, that's where I go with it.
So may I go now, Daryl, or do
yeah, I'll just,
Board members want to get their conclusion first.
I agree with what Julie said. That is the method. Doesn't mean a sieve analysis could not also be done, but it's supplemental as opposed to the only thing. But we can go back out in the field again and make arrangements to do that and planning for that. So Steve or Diana, any comments at the moment?
Diana, you're on mute.
No, I was a little slow to log in because I'm in a different computer.
Hmm.
So I'm a little behind here.
I can talk then, if that, Diana, if that's okay. So yeah, I got the email as well. I have to agree with what Julie and Gerald have talked about. And it says it all at the end. It says it's a confirmatory, I can't say the word. Confirmatory device.
Confirmatory.
Confirmatory, okay, thank you. But not the sole method of soil classification. And I guess the way I look at it is, when you make decisions like this, you're never going to get the perfect amount of information. But if there's a proven method and a proven step of getting additional information to make those decisions, then I think it's well worth taking that step.
I see Diana's still reading.
I'm still reading. I was going to say I had some password access issues with
Yeah.
my code, and it's like, oh. Okay. So Claire, in essence, is saying normally the section that there's a disagreement to go back into the field. No.
Basically, she confirmed that we can't use the sieve analysis in place of a soil evaluation. You have to use them together as per Title V to make an appropriate determination, which I also what I think we were grappling with if one could be used over the other. But in this case, it's new construction, so that's not possible.
Yeah. And I did get information from others that sieve analysis doesn't override field.
Yeah, and if I may, Madam
Evaluation.
Chair, sieve analysis is only used in Title V when you cannot do a percolation test for a repair, not for new construction. As I noted at the previous meeting, I just want to make sure that's clear that it's only allowed if you cannot do a percolation test, as noted in Title V's approvals. Thank you.
Yes, and that was how another DEP person viewed it, is that the code specifies a method and it is not specifying sieve analysis. All right, so that's it. Bob, would you like to comment?
I'm just going to repeat what I said first a minute ago. You did exactly the opposite of what we agreed on in the last meeting, and I find that very frustrating. You went to DEP and you asked them, when we agreed in good faith that we would work together and meet with DEP together, and you did exactly what we said we were uncomfortable with. And I find that very frustrating. That's number one. Number two,
can I just
hang on. Now, I think
Bob,
I get a chance to speak, don't I now? I listened to all of you. I'd like to speak, if that's all right.
Okay, I'll try to remember my question for you that's relevant.
Okay, go ahead, Daryl. What's your question?
What do you think happens? I explained to you how this communication came about, which was meant to be research for us to help formulate the questions. All right. It took a turn I never anticipated.
All I can say is that we agreed in good faith on a method. We agreed in good faith on a methodology, and you did something different. You reached out to DEP, and that has resulted in a process that we, anyway, it's kind of, what's done is done, but let's talk going forward. So,
okay, I'll explain further. We are the board who carries out DEP regulations. They are our key liaison. We're representing them. We just ask questions. There's nothing, I'm not sure what about the process gets perverted by that.
We had a good faith agreement at the last meeting that didn't.
We had an agreement to have a meeting together with them. That did not work out.
Daryl, I don't think we need. I don't think we have. This isn't going to be productive. I think we should continue.
Okay. All right, go on.
I'm willing to move on. I've just made my point that we had an agreement in good faith that clearly did not work out for us on one side of the agreement. So number two, Julia, I want to address what you said, because I think, you know, the facts here are important. You said we agreed in the field initially when we dug those holes. That is not correct. I was there. I listened to it. I know what happened that day. And DeShang said one thing and Mark said another thing. That's what happened that day. And they left, you know, and Claire is right. They left without agreeing. The agent and the engineer did not agree that day. I witnessed that. And that was a mistake on both their parts, as it turns out. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's also done. Then DeShang filed and he called it loamy sand across the board. And then if you look at the emails that or the email specifically that I sent you on this topic, Mark appropriately wrote back and said, I don't agree with this. And DeShang said, okay. And Mark suggested a conversation. They had a phone conversation. DeShang then documented that phone conversation by changing the Form 11 to read that 2 of the test holes were in fact sandy loam. He caved to Mark's insistence that day. All of that is factual. It's It's in the email that I laid things out. And so for you to say we agreed that day of the initial testing is just simply not correct. I was there and I can tell you that's not what happened. What I just described to you is what's happened. It's documented by eyewitness evidence. It's documented by emails and everything else. So we can move on from that topic. Lastly, I would say that I actually read the email to think that and come away that I believe if the board wants to, and I'm not saying the board is required to do this, but if the board would like to go back, and I think Julie, you were leading the charge that going out and doing an additional sieve analysis was the right thing to do because it is the best science. Maybe now I'm putting words in your mouth. But that you kind of, when we kind of came up with that compromise when we last met, I believe that, you were in favor of that as a compromise, as a way to get out of this very difficult situation that we're in. And so I'm reading the last material sentence of the email, and it says, a sieve analysis may be used in cases of new construction purely as a confirmatory device, but not as the sole method of soil classification. And so what I would say is that when it was done in the field, appropriately according to Title V, and I think you said many times, I went back and reviewed the tape, Julie, you said many times, it was all done properly initially. And the only thing that wasn't done properly is both the engineer and the agent failed to come to agreement in the field. And that was a mistake on both their parts, as it turns out. And I'm not here to criticize either one of them. I'm just saying that we're left cleaning that up, the rest of us. So I guess what I'm saying is my reading of Title V is that it is the job of the soil evaluator to make the call, okay? And DeShang, in this case, is the soil evaluator. There is no question under Title V, DeShang is the soil evaluator. Mark's role is to represent the approving body or whatever, I can't remember the term that Title V uses, authority. Mark's job is to represent the approving authority. And so I would argue that that last sentence says that a sieve analysis she says, may be used in cases of new construction purely as confirmatory. And so what I would suggest is that the soil evaluator has made a call that this is loamy sand. And you, the board, and me, the applicant, would simply be using a sieve analysis as a confirmatory device to confirm what DeShang has put in the Form 11. And so I think if you want to read Claire's email that way, and I'm not saying you have to, you can spin, Claire's email however you want. But if you want to come to a kind of a, what's the right word, a compromise in how we can get out of this situation where two of the test holes that were done were not agreed upon in the field, and there was a dispute back and forth on the Form 11 over, actually, it turns out now, many years. And I am suggesting that Claire's email says that a sieve analysis can be used as a confirmatory device to confirm what the soil evaluator has said. It would be obviously not confirming what Mark has said on these two holes. And so I'll leave it at that and get feedback from you all on that reading of Claire's email.
Okay, Mark, I'd like you to speak next and then DeShang after.
One second. You're right with you. Sorry about that. So first and foremost, I'd like to state that I respectfully disagree with what was just said. When I was out in the field, we did confirm our soil testing. There was no suggestion that what I was logging was different from DeShang. In fact, the first form submitted, the soil evaluation report, that was submitted to the ZBA as one of the documents agreed, Deschang's information agreed with my information. As the plan came in, that's when it changed. So I'd like to note that, and again, as noted at the prior meeting, the best way to go out there is to go out, do soil evaluation, which I am a soil evaluator representing the Board of Health. So we go out there together, Deschang, the other soil evaluator. And as noted, we were in agreement. And then all of a sudden, when the plans were submitted, it changed. And I respectfully disagree that there was discussion that was noted just previous to my discussion here that we were in disagreement. We were in agreement, and then it changed when the septic plan was submitted to our office. I'll leave it at that. This is Madam Chair. I'm not finished. I was just going to say, I'm sure, you know, there might be debate on it, but I want to make the record clear for this recorded meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so before.
So
go
can
to
I
the
answer
fact-
that? I think it's important that we get to the facts. And the facts are, when I stood out there and I listened to them talk, what Mark said that day was, yeah, this is loamy sand to sandy loam. And Deschang said, this is loamy sand. If you go to the documentary evidence that we have from that day, Deschang's notes and Mark's notes, Mark is correct that his notes on those two, actually it was, I think there was a third one, but they agreed on the phone afterwards on the third one, and there were just two now that are in dispute. But in Mark's notes, it does say sandy loam. However, to say that they were in agreement that day is incorrect, because Deschang's notes, and I've reviewed them, clearly say loamy sand. So they were not in agreement that day. And I disagree with Mark based on the documentary evidence that's available to us.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to say that we have had these discussions over and over and over for a very long time. The question becomes, for me, are we going to go ahead with additional sampling in the field? And if so, my opinion is that the sieve analysis can be done, but also it would be accompanied by the standardly required field evaluation. And is that something that you are interested in pursuing?
I would offer kind of a variation on that, okay? I would offer a variation that would be, we can go out there, and if Deschang and Mark and an independent third party, to me, it just gets silly, because everybody's just running soil through their fingers, and there's no ability. Under Title V has percentages of different types of matter that you make the call on. You can't do that with your fingers. You can only do that with a lab analysis. I am, however, willing to agree that everybody can run it through their fingers, but I want us to agree that the confirmatory device, to use Claire's words, the confirmatory device of Deschang's initial reading of the soil, the soil evaluator under Title V, the confirmatory device would be the sieve analysis, and that we would all agree that that's the science and that's what we're going to live with. That's what I would propose as a compromise to what you just said, Daryl.
That's not how it's historically been used. I can say that I got that information from whoever else I was talking to at DEP, that when they resort to that, other than when it's essential, because either for a repair and an upgrade, if the soil is too wet to do a perk test, or if the evaluators together are agreeing that something is so on the border that they then go to sieve analysis to resolve that kind of difference.
That seems like where we are.
That was what was told to me. I am not willing at this time because I don't know what other factors may come up, fall out in the field that could influence which method. And I don't want to rule that out because that's not the standard way that it's done. And I'm not willing to go against DEP protocols on this. I'm certainly willing to have both and have it be a part of the decision, but given that I heard multiple times that the sieve analysis does not override a field evaluation, this is contrary to that. What you've just proposed is contrary. So I say we do both. And frankly, I think there is often great alignment, just as we saw with the sample that was collected for sieve analysis from the southern portion of the proposed field. Matched both DeShang and Mark's evaluation of the soils there. So there's a confirmation that there can be alignment. And I would rather just go into it open-minded about what we may encounter. That's the mystery of the subsurface. We don't know.
So I'm gonna.
I'd rather be flexible.
I'm gonna say that we're not gonna get to an agreement on this. So I'm gonna propose that we explore some other ideas on this topic. So we are in agreement that the southern field.
Okay, if I may. So
No, let me go on to Sheng, please. It sounds like we are in agreement that the southern field is loamy sand. Does the board agree with that? That we have no disagreement on the southern field, that it's loamy sand? Is that right?
I did not see any discrepancies or disagreement in the Form 11s or in the notes, but I would like to.
Correct. That's correct.
Right. And so that is my understanding, but I'm going to check back in with our agent that he also agrees with that the southern.
Okay, we can ask him. Go ahead. I'm trying to get to I'm going somewhere with all of this that I think is a place.
I gather you are. So, okay, Mark.
So in respect to what we're talking about, I believe it's always best to have the plan submitted, but I have completed an Excel spreadsheet that shows confirmation of the testing that was done with both Deschang's notes and my notes, and that will explain where there was differences, which we discussed at the last meeting. And it is down on the lower side that most of the soil that showed two types of soil. You know, you had just sandy loam and your loomy sand. So that is indeed where we need to start considering doing soil evaluation. And I kind of wonder, soil evaluation isn't just running soil through your fingers. You actually check compaction. Compaction is very important. Check can I finish, please? Thank you. You check the soil compaction. You check to make sure the colors are observed, because color can make a difference. You check for groundwater. And also, just as important, is the depth of it. What we're looking for is the layer below this soil absorption area, this leaching field, 4 feet of that soil, if it meets Title V, that is completely reviewed and determined through soil evaluation. And Deschang can probably complement this part. We both had to take at least 4 full days of soil evaluation courses. And from there, we still have to keep up our credits to be soil evaluators. So it's just not running soil through your fingers. I just want to make sure that's clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I stand corrected, but I will repeat my question to the board and to Mark. Can we agree that the southern of the 3 fields, there are 2 side by side, and then there's a field to the south. The field to the south, the testing was done in November. Mark's notes all said loamy sand. Deschang said loamy sand. Form 11 was filed, loamy sand. I'm just trying to kind of put aside things that we can agree on so we can have a bigger picture conversation. So can we agree on the soil type for that southern field, the testing of which was done in November, and we all know the results. I think, Julie, you've gone over them very carefully, it sounds like, which is great.
And so just to clarify to the rest of the board, so I've gone through all of the forms, I've mapped them out spatially to make sure I have an understanding of the field. And I have it on my notes in front of me, of which you guys can't see, but what he's referring to are deep pools 5-1, 5-2, and 5-3. And I did not see any discrepancies there. So from my review, that is correct.
I would
that-
agree with that as well, Julie.
And I would just say this,
Mark,
agree.
so
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. I would agree with that too. The 5 dash holes were agreed upon. And again, it all comes back to the original Form 11 that was submitted on the ZBA site. And we were in agreement on that, as well as the other deep holes that changed when the septic plans were submitted to the Board of Health, the ZBA.
So,
Thank you.
So here's where I'm going next. So we have agreement on that one. We can design for the 32 home development. We are able to design under Sandy Loam on 1 or 2 of the other fields. Okay, that can happen. That will push those fields further. It would be west, which would be down the hill toward the wetlands and toward the neighbor's property line. So right now we are sitting with the system, and we tried very, very hard to keep that system at the 100-foot buffer zone line. Okay, that was something we worked at to do. If you want us on the other 2, we have an agreement on the southern one that we're good. If you want us to redesign, we can push to 85 or 90 feet off the wetlands and move that field just a little bit bigger further down the hill. And I guess I'm surprised that you would want that. You know, we really tried hard to keep that system. You know, it is honestly, it's an arbitrary line, obviously, of 100 feet, but we wanted to respect that setback. Now, as you all know, under Title V, it's 50 feet to wetlands. So in a 40B, which the 32 home proposal is a 40B, we could push all the way down to 50 feet. We don't want to do that. The neighbors don't want us to do that. You don't want us to do that. But we have the ability to do that redesign. We just don't think it's necessary, and we don't think it makes sense. But we can do it. So it's not like if folks are thinking that this is going to reduce the number of homes by making this call on the soil type, by forcing us to use a soil type that we do not think is accurate. We think it's sand to loamy sand is what we think of the soil types there. And we don't think that the system needs to push inside of that 100-foot buffer zone. But we can do it and keep the same number of bedrooms in the system. It's just it's a shame, I think, to do that. So I guess I'd like your feedback on that.
I would say my perspective is that we do not want a system for which the soils are not adequate to receive the flow expected. And again, with the information that we have, which we are going to defer, I am going to defer to the agent's evaluation, because there's not a reason to not default to that in the absence of additional new information. Our job is to make sure that the design is protective of the water quality that people need to drink. So to me, it's not a negotiation. That's what the regulation states. This is the kind of
So
flow
what I
that
would,
If I may,
not Mark, sorry, Bob. Just,
What I
am
would
so-
say, Daryl, is the additional information.
I'm not
that-
done. I'm
I'm
not
sorry, I
done.
thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, I was interrupted. I wasn't done. Um, and I've lost my train of thought. So that's our duty.
Okay,
We are not trading off undersizing a system to keep it further away from the wetlands. We shouldn't have to make those trade-offs first
no,
place,
no,
but
no.
and that is not the point. This was not ever about, oh gee, let's make this requirement so that it reduces the number of bedrooms. That was not the objective. The objective was to get it to perform as Title V says it should
Yep.
be performing. That's it.
Okay.
That's our duty. That's what we look at. We're not
So,
winging it on policy as we go along. We're following the regulations.
so Daryl, you did say that you always believe the agent unless there's additional information. The additional information in the current situation, there are two pieces of additional information, which I think should cause you to not necessarily 100% go with what the agent's view that day was in the field. And here are the two things. The first is the perk rate. Okay. Loamy Sands.
Okay, I know we've discussed this. You don't need to review the issue for me.
I'm
Shank has
sorry,
presented
Daryl.
it several times.
Daryl, may I finish the two quick things I wanted to say?
It's sort of a standard rule in meetings that if we hear it all the time at meetings, if the point has been made before and we pay attention to all
No,
of this.
that point has not been made before in this meeting. And
The perfect
Steve
Shank
is
has
new to the
brought it up
board. Steve is new to
multiple
the board,
times.
and Steve has not heard this point.
Well, then we could be repeating how many hours? 50
Well,
hours?
I think
If
for
we want
Steve to
repeat-
vote on this, Steve should be allowed to hear the applicant's at least a minute or two of my points, which are that the soil type that Deschang has identified is extremely consistent with 3 to 5 minute perk rates, in which we have. The soil type that Mark has said he sees here is consistent with perk rates beyond 10 minutes. So we have a perk rate consistency with Deschang's call, okay? And the second consistency with Deschang's call is the two sieve analysis lab tests that we did. Both of those are consistent with Deschang's call on the soil type. And so you say, Daryl, I believe Mark 100% of the time, unless there's additional information, those two pieces of science are really important. And I would encourage you in this one case to agree with Deschang and not to Mark, even though they're dug in. You know, this is not for this board about Mark's your guy and Deschang's my guy. This is about, you know, what Michael Lesser always calls, and I love this phrase, ground truth, okay? Perk rates are consistent with what Deschang's call is, and the lab sieve analysis is consistent. We're looking for ground truth. It's not my guy and your guy. And I just, you know,
Okay.
It's not
I
a
guess,
guy, excuse me, Shank, it's not a guy, it's a role. That is why these things are observed in the first place. Again, DEP's opinion.
but
You would go
science
with
matters.
the agent acting on behalf of a government entity.
That
That's,
doesn't make him right. It just makes him have that role of working for the approving authority. Working for the government doesn't make you right. It makes you working for the government.
and between two choices, that's what government agencies, I've asked people who are working within them what their experience has been, and that's the case. So again, I'm not willing to set, personally, I am not willing to set precedent by varying from something that is so very standard within the regulatory community. So Mark, do you have any comments about,
I think my hand
Sure.
is up for so long, I deserve at this to
hold on,
give a
Drew.
chance to speak just quickly.
Daryl,
Right,
do you
so
want me to
my-
respond first on the accusation that was just, not accusation, but about me being a government person? I would exception to,
maybe skip over that. That was my
I'll stick with
issue.
the, sure,
more
I'll stick,
interested in the,
yeah, you bet. The perk
Great.
rate, I can go over the perk rate. So in section 15.242 in Title 5, long-term acceptance rates, the perk rates can be 5 or less and still be a class 1 or class 2 soil. Now, what does that mean? A class 2 soil is a sandy loam to a loam. A class 1 soil is a sand to a loomy sand. So the perk rates, you have it right in that chart, can be either class of soil. So I think that itself is built right into Title V. I just wanted to explain that. And again, I take exception. I've worked for the Board of Health and I represent the Board of Health as a licensed soil evaluator. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Desheng.
All right, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just feel there's things there not necessary to contend for something from what I'm reading. So from the last meeting, definitely I can understand, or maybe you all can understand now why I suggested that we should formulate our question together for the clarity. So that's right now, because of that question sent out, I'm reading the response from DEP. That email was addressing many issues, and it was kind of mixed together. So that's one, I see the confusion part. So I'm reading of Claire's email is exactly as I stated at last meeting, and Julie agreed. We are not asking the board to use in-situ analysis for any new design to replace the PERC testing. Okay, that's fact one. I'm just, as the design engineer, I never asked for that. And exactly the way as Daryl just said, unless even DEP said, so normally the soil textures should be all agreed on. And if Mark, if you remember, we do have some little bit uncertainty, I'm not even say dispute in the field. When we come into some soils, it's difficult to call out either sandy loam or loamy sand. Mark's habit, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong, right? Mark, you are here, we're professional. So he would say sandy loam to loamy sand. So if you're checking on the notes, that's what the notes was putting in as a sandy loam to loamy sand, which means at the site, at least to have a consensus, we can. But as Bob said, as my opinion, I called loamy sand, which is in my notes and in my first version of my soil report submitted to the board. I have all the record and the email. Okay, so what that said means if you have 10 people, you have to reach in a consensus. You know it's not easy if they are on the borderline. So means this case is on the borderline. And not only the notes and the discussions we had in the field, it's actually when the civil analysis result coming out, it plotted out, it's just close to the borderline loamy sand, of course, not for the ones in the southern part, 5, 1, 2, 3, which is technically coming out as median sand, and we call it as a loamy sand, and in the field, because it's so obvious, so there's no dispute. But whenever coming a little bit to the north, we Mark called loamy sand and sandy loam in the field, but my feeling is loamy sand, and I'm not trying to say one way or the other without any other supplementary, or you call it confirmatory method. If you ask me right now, coming to that soils, I will not be able to 100% to say one way or the other. But as a soil evaluator, I've been done thousands of tests in the pit. So not just conforming. I'm the one usually getting dirty in the first place. So my hand is not just testing the soil texture. I also get a very good, even just by my hand feel the soils, I can get a very good estimate on the per grade. Mark, you can speak for that too, and many other agents. I'm not trying to boast it. It's just because I did so many. So I get that statistic almost in my head. I get rough estimate on, but not say 100% always be right. But again, so I'm just saying that we are not asking the board to compromise or not asking Mark to yield to my determination. So, but in the practical perspective, I have been taking the good conservative approach. If it's called loamy sand to sandy loam, we design for sandy loam. That have been done in the town. You can go check in many projects. That's what we agreed, and we did. And as Bob said, it's not for contesting as a design engineer as well as a certified wetland scientist. So I know what the best thing to design for, at least in my standard and from my moral and ethical engineering perspective. I would like to set the fields as far as possible. And if I deem the soils has the capacity to take in the flow. So therefore, we could make the fields a little bit bigger, as Bob said, but it's not in the way to be negotiating with the board to compromise the standard from that perspective. So when I was reviewing, when we designed originally, it was just for single family house, it has plenty room to make it just a loamy sandy loam design. So I don't even need to bother. But for this case, a little bit bigger, and we need to get into a point to getting closer. I check in my notes again because I said, wow, the rate is pretty good. In my head, I remember it's a loamy sand, even though I know in the consensus kind of determination with Mark, we called loamy sand the sandy loam, but was not really reflecting my notes. I went to my field notes again, so that's why we'll end up correcting on the plan. So I just want to make it into the record, which is not just what I said. Bob's forwarded my email. I can submit the email because I don't want the board or anybody thinking Dashen was a coercion to any pressure that I change my design or soil logs arbitrarily, because that will be shamed, and I would so without any justification or in any way. So I want to make that very loud and clear. We are not arbitrarily changing that. That change history, I am the person, okay? That's why I want to speak it out. I want to make sure if that things you didn't read it or you feel there's any uncertainty, I'm not, so it's like September 1st, the night 2021, I had the email out, and then Mark responded September 2nd, and then so that's what the whole soil log was changed from loamy sand from my field notes to loamy sand to sandy loam kind of condition. So, and then back again. So last meeting, I would still call whatever clear golden, what said is exactly as what I was presenting and requested. And that Julie understood at that time, we kind of agreed to move on to do the two. Then after the meeting, I did come back, did a very detailed location check-ins on which soils conformation, and actually asking the board to conform it. So which is 5510-10 AM and 5-11. That's a two test pit was getting, it's not dispute, it's just this. So we had a different opinion, and then so all this story I have just presented, and that the way we propose to take in sample as confirmatory sampling and testing is fully in compliance with the Title V, Section 15.243 and 401, as a clear golden stated out at the end of it was I don't see anything we are trying to asking the board to compromise your regulatory enforcement standards. And I didn't see any of us or Mark or I committed any, fraudulent and practice in this process. And as a democratic process, I stated out, we agree to disagree as a process, but we do also have to follow some professional procedures as well as allowed under the law that we can do things, not legalism to say, oh yeah, the soil just cannot be that. I never will situate myself in that situation. And for actual factual, we all know this test pit, the soil is pretty deep, 10 to 14, 17 feet deep. And the water table we wanted is really deep. If the soil is really bad and not really, that good soil, you will see the water within 4 feet or also, unless you are getting into the wetlands. So from factual and from legally, I read and I did spend time to review my emails and review my notes because I know it's important. Today's meeting, we're trying to reach an agreement. We are not coming back just for trying to establish any procedural standards. We are not asking that. So if anything, you perceive that as a design engineer, I will fully disagree with that agenda. So with that said, it's still up to the board what you will do. We are definitely not saying using that as a negotiation. If it to come into the shelf, as I said, I still think it's a loamy sand. If we can agree to go using the conformatory approach, sample it and do move on. If it's not, we have to insist it's a loamy sand in this sandy loam on this part. We will push in our field a little closer to the wetlands. And I don't see that's anything wrong either, because I think that's a discretionary kind of approach. So at this, as a design engineer, I did what I did. I think it's correct technically, but if through your legal review and we cannot agree, and thirdly, of course, Bob had his choice. He can appeal to the court or to whatever. As a design engineer, I'm not trying to lure out or tell any of you to do what you got out to do. I'm just, as a professional engineer working in this field for a long time with really experience, I'm just telling the truth I see, not necessarily exactly truth, but at the truth as I see, and as the best approach to protect our water and the environment, as all the board is set to do. That's what I hope I can make this pitch and making this the factual clarification so that everybody can see what I see, and then you make your decision. I
Okay.
have no.
Okay, on that note, first question. Do we want to go back to what we originally envisioned this meeting would be, which is formulating questions? Is that still of interest to the board and Bob?
Can I interject? I have a,
Yes.
I'm gonna say a different answer, different question is what I'm thinking. Which is, I mean, I think what we had really started with, and I would like to go back to is next steps instead of asking more questions to DEP. I don't particularly.
Oh, well, I was going to get to the next steps, which
Okay.
is
So you
3
wanted-
next steps, but I just wanted to clear up whether that was still, since that's what we originally thought we would be spending our time doing. But the responses that we got unexpectedly had turned into a whole other discussion than I think what we had planned and anticipated for today.
Stage, if I say I would, because I do feel Clear Golden's question was not in the real full context as I was expected to ask. So if we can agree to formulate and circulate the question And either I started or Darryl, you want to ask Mark too, because he's soil evaluator, he probably can ask him the question more in context. And so we get agreement, we send it out for clarification purpose, because either you do it, I will do, because as I said, I do feel these things can coming up in the future to call Sandy Long to loan me sand. So therefore, I will reaching out to DEP one way or the other, because I do need to make sure that's the appropriate procedure to settle a dispute, because otherwise the dispute is going to be, to me, is no good, sound scientific approach. So there, from that perspective, not just for this project, but for the future, I think I need
Okay.
to get it clear.
Okay, so, all right. So it sounds like you could go either way, but I think it's more important either from board members, whether you think we have more information we need.
Well, and I'm unclear as to whether she would answer any differently, because it sounds like when I think of what questions I would ask, I think she answered that.
Yes, I'm feeling as well. I also had the benefit of speaking with someone else and just getting a feel for how it is typically done repeatedly on just these kind of issues. So then, Bob, do you have outstanding questions?
I mean, Daryl, the way this went down, I think is horrible. And
What were the
but hang on, let me finish my
I don't think
sentence.
we're answered.
But I think the train has left the station. I agree with Julie and I think Diana that the train has left the station on this one. We didn't get a fair shot to get the question crafted in a way that we believed was fair. And I don't think you can take that genie out of the bottle, or whatever metaphor you want to use. It's or put the genie back in the bottle. She's been asked the question, unfortunately, and not in a way that we wanted. But it's been done, and I'm ready to drive on. I agree with Diana. I don't think you're going to get a different answer if you go back now. So I happen to think her answer allows you the room to do as I thought, agreed on at our last meeting, which was to use the sieve analysis as determinative. I think her language allows you that if you want to take it, but I guess I'm hearing that you don't feel that way. So
I heard different things when I spoke to people. More elaboration on confirming between two evaluators. But
and now,
in any
Daryl,
case,
you're giving us conversations that we can't even read the words.
I understand. I'm just telling you, so I just have a different take on it, but that's because, right, I did some research. Okay, then the other choices are, do you want to go back out in the field and test? For me, it would have to be still involving the standard soil evaluation and then accompanied by a sieve analysis is perfectly fine with me. But I don't want to, again, deviate from the regular process that would be done approaching any new test pit.
So let me ask you a question, Daryl. If we go with your proposal of doing both, running it through the fingers of Mark and DeShang and a third party, and we do a sieve analysis, if they disagree with each other, what's the answer? Because to me, the sieve analysis is clearly the gold standard, as the town's peer reviewer said, and I think that should be used. But if the board's not in agreement that that's what's going to rule the day, if there's a difference, then, I mean, otherwise we just end up right, let's say that the independent person agrees with DeShang, but Mark still thinks it's Sandy Loam. I mean, in other words, what's dispositive? I'm not going to get a machine and spend all the money, go back out in the field until you tell me what is going to make you happy, what's going to resolve our dispute. And I think that's a fair question.
So I think what I've learned from talking to people who also do this, right, from the folks that I spoke with, that this is not, there's always a different mix of factors, which is what we encounter all the time with looking at septic systems and homes and room layouts and all the rest. It's how it balances out. And I think often, from what I've witnessed with seeing soil evaluators working together in the field, is often they do come to the same conclusions. Sometimes it takes going to several spots. It takes evaluations of what the predominant soil type is on any given layer and maybe checking things a little bit differently. But I can't think of any, not that I've witnessed an enormous number, but I've witnessed some contentious ones, which is why I was out there just to observe the process. And there is some resolution. So I think that it's ordinarily resolved in the field. And then, as I mentioned, from what I heard from others, is that the sieve analysis is for when the evaluators themselves are on the fence. So when it's spread across uncertainty between two evaluators, tough to say. And I don't want to lock us in to one or the other. And given that the DEP folks all said that the soil evaluation, the standard approach, takes precedence over, or takes priority over, the sieve analysis. And I can understand from your perspective of feeling that laboratories offer a different kind of precision, but it's different. And they named a number of cases in which the field has advantages. So it's a mixture of the two. One is not clearly better. They did not understand the term gold standard for sieve analysis. Never heard of it. We're very curious about that, but I couldn't really shed any light on that terminology. So anyone else on the board want to comment on where you stand on that particular issue, Julie?
I'm sorry, I'm faster as my real hand. So looking at the, if only we had the AI enabled. If looking at kind of the middle paragraph of what Claire wrote, and I think this is what it's kind of getting down to, is the evaluation needs to be representative of the in situ soils in the whole. And so the way she described that is, if you have 3 sides of a 4-sided whole, and you see similar soils on 3 of the sides and something different on 1, you don't take the average of all of them. You take the one that's the majority of the sides, not the one that's the outlier. And so that is the issue with when you do any type of sampling, it has to be representative of the whole. And so then we'd have to get into details around exactly how many sides and where within the deep hole horizons that we have to do a sample in order to have a full representation. I mean, it gets kind of complicated. I think that is the advantage of having multiple professional eyes on this, looking at this in situ to be able to really look at the proper representation. So I guess the answer for me, because I think, Bob, you ask a really good question, which is what's going to decide this, yes or no, so you can decide what to do next, is my take on Claire's guidance to us is the sieve analysis is not what determines the classification. It will be the in situ evaluation by the certified evaluator. And that's what I would like to go with.
And our certified evaluator, Julie, has spoken. The certified evaluator under Title V in this on this project is Deshang Wang. That's the certified evaluator.
And so are you saying that you're not interested in going back to the areas of those 2 deep holes that we've discussed?
Honestly, Julie, I'm not hearing, and this is too often my experience. I'm not hearing what the answer is. I'm hearing we're just gonna go out there, and we're gonna dig some more holes, and we're gonna kind of work at it. And that's not an answer to me. I want to know how I can satisfy you. We did the original testing. There was disagreement. We have determined there was disagreement after the fact. There was disagreement the day of the testing. They had a conversation, as DeShang described. He caved and he called it sandy loam on 2 of the holes. Mark caved on the other 2 that were in his notes as sandy loam. And they came to an agreement that when he filed that second Form 11 on what it was. We're now saying he caved, that wasn't what he thought. He just gave it to you. We want science to determine it. And I'm not hearing that if I spend the time and the effort and the money to go out there with a machine and dig more holes, that we're going to get a definitive answer. We could get out there and DeShang thinks this and Mark thinks that. And I just don't have an appetite to do any more of that.
If I may, from technically, just what Julie just read, I think whatever Claire said is correct. And so the way right now we need to understand and get an agreement is how to get a representative sample. It's not like that you can use sieve analysis to confirm a soil texture. So when Bob referenced to the golden rule or method, is basically say this is the accurate method you can. I know, or so the soil texture, whatever. I think there's some confusions here from Dial's description or understanding of the soil evaluation, in my view. So soil evaluation taking into many considerations for the feasibility to situ a septic leaching field is not, and including soil texture, high groundwater consistency, and so on and so forth, high groundwater, right? So from that perspective, definitely, there's no way you can use just a sieve analysis to determine, including the perk rate. So the perk, we had done perk rate, and for replacement is they cannot do perk rate, the high groundwater is too high, just like in next door, they have to take in the soil sample, just using the soil sample, and then use that to replace, get an estimate, perk rate. We are not asking to do that. And here we know that. And again, so taking a representative, I'm citing a little bit, I just want to clarify understanding as a truly trained soil evaluator systematically, then hearsay, she say, and decide. I'm not trying to criticize, but science or anything you started is a systematic approach, understanding of it. It's not like I'm not saying to looking down any, you are doctors, you are people much outsmart me in any way. But in the soil evaluation fields, I'm not trying to elevate myself. I had much more experience and training systematically, and I fully agree that, but I'm not trying to use one methodology or the complications to deny any components of the soil evaluation. Okay, so that's a part I heard from confusing part. Sounds like people trying to use the complicated process and deny any detailed part of, like in a car, you cannot say, oh, the car is so complicated, therefore you cannot test the battery if the battery is valid or not. And you say, oh, you cannot use a meter, you have to drive in the car. That's a totally different perspective of this soil evaluation. So again, because right now we are debating whether we should take in the sample and what the purpose of the sample. We are debating what you are using it for, because we are all at this to put on us request, not the intention we were trying to request for. We are just purely just for the soil texture itself, not saying if the hole is properly evaluated, if the soil sample is properly taken, if the soil sample was not represented, take it, there's another methodology. This again, you have the second person, almost like you have to do a statistical study, because even quantum mechanics, you cannot get accurate definitive answer. There's some opinions, like in how can you say President Biden or Trump is going to win unless you
Okay,
do
I
that,
want
right?
to.
No, let me finish it. Let me finish it technically. Technically, so that means we have to go to how to take in the representative sample. So there's two aspects of it. One is the depth perspective. Mark all kind of mentioned to it. You have to be taking the soil sample in the representative horizon and depth. So which
We
is
understand
important.
that.
Okay,
Yes.
then you understand. I don't know if other people understand it, right? I want to make sure if we want to reach an agreement, that's where we should go, not debating on those like
And I think that
second, I haven't finished it, please. So second is to look in the surface. Again, we know is going to be a rating back is a difficult opinion because you're looking at, I think this soil is representative and this is not. That's the part I have a little bit concern is how we are going to reach that. The depth is easy. So if I know where the septic fields elevation 4 feet from there, I can determine easily. But if you're looking for the surface side, and so 3 sides of it, you only can take that sample. You cannot take in the whole 2/10 of soils to the lab. You have to take in to the limited, like in a couple gallons. So then you take in here as representative or there as representative. If you cannot mix it, then how you take in the representative? That's why at the first I asking that we should get that clarified with the DEP further. The DEP's message, he said, she said, that's why I feel that message was not fully understood or conveyed to this meeting. Thank you.
I'll just mention, we didn't mean to convey anything to the DEP. I was researching and Jessica was checking on another issue. All right, so that, again, of course we didn't ask all those things. That's what we were going to be formulating today, but now we're in a different place. All right, so Diana, you've had your hand up for a long time.
Yeah, so my question was about our options at this point. So we're looking
Yes.
at this agreement with, do we have a representative sample? And I do share Bob's concern that we could go out to the field again and have the same scenario that we currently have. But I clarified my mind because Bob, if we went with Mark's analysis of the soil, do you have this? You don't have the space for a larger leaching field.
No, we
Or
do.
do you?
We do.
You
We can do
do?
it. Yes. Yep.
In the same place.
No,
We
we just have to
would
push it
need
to
to
the wet.
push, we would need to push, as I said earlier, from approximately 100 feet away from the wetlands on that one of the 3 fields. We would need to push maybe 10 or 15 feet further down.
But the location would in essence be the same. It would just because it's larger, it would be
exactly.
pushing closer
Yeah.
to the wetlands.
Yeah. And Diana, you're bringing up something, if you guys will indulge me, I keep trying to lead us to
A solution.
a
Yes.
solution. So
I
I'm
would
going to
also
try
take the
again now.
opportunity to lay out what I see as the choices.
Okay.
One is questions, doesn't have to be, okay? Maybe we're past that. 2 is whether go back out and do sampling to address what we view as the outstanding issues with the existing plan. I will say now for that, I still want to stick with what Title V has as a standard procedure, to follow that procedure. And I guess I have faith that having 3 evaluators out there, right, we'll find an independent. And then we'll go with whatever the majority is of their opinion. And if they, among those evaluators, agree that the civ analysis is needed because they are all on the fence about what the soils are. 2 out of the 3 are on the fence of the determination. Then the soil analysis, the sieve analysis, excuse me, is supplementary to their evaluation. But that's the hierarchy that I believe DEP has been communicating to us. And then the other is, it sounds like you're potentially considering a new septic plan that will be a bigger system. And I don't know if that's a decision that you would make
Well-
now, or you
well-
need more time to know whether we're ending this one and moving on to that.
If you want to give me a little bit of time, I'd like to make a proposal that maybe we can all get on the same page on, if you're ready for that.
Okay.
This is what I would propose. We all know that I've put out in public what I think is a resolution that a lot of people in the community and on the various boards can I think get comfortable with. That's the feedback I've gotten. I'm not saying everybody's, thrilled with what I've put out in public as a more global solution. And we're not here to talk about anything except Farm Road today, because that's what's on your agenda. So I'm not going to go beyond that, the 4 corners of that agenda item. So on Farm Road, what I have clearly said is that I would be willing to consider trying to work with you all, and it's less Concom issues for the most part. It's really Board of Health issues, and work with you all to try to design 5 single-family homes on the 14 acres. And obviously, we've got a lot of testing, including the testing that we're discussing at length today, to rely on. This is so everybody knows that. This is what I would suggest as a way to get us out of this loop, this loop of conversation. We keep saying the same things again and again and again. And I'm not sure that I think we have some kind of just fundamental differences on how we approach things. And I can't change that, and you guys can't change it either. So maybe this will work. What I would say is that, similar to what we did over on Washington Street, I would today ask you to put a stay, or I don't know what the right term is, but a stay on our application for the Title V 32-home septic system that we're having such a hard time getting to yes on. And what that would give you is, you don't have to deny it. What it gives me is, I don't have to litigate it. We put it aside, okay, temporarily and possibly permanently. I can't withdraw it permanently for, I think, what would be obvious reasons to everyone in the room. But I can ask you to temporarily put it aside, to stay it, or hiatus, whatever term you want to use. And I will go to work on the 5 single-family homes. 2 of them we already have designed, and this board, not you, Steve, of course, but this board has seen them before. And they're already designed, and we're making a few very minor tweaks to them. We're improving, or we're correcting things based on Mark's feedback from several years ago, which we received detailed feedback from Mark several years ago. And we believe the first 2 that are designed are very approvable in reasonably short order. My proposal would be that we stay this application, and we don't have any more conversations about how to resolve this issue. What I would say is, it would be an unfortunate occurrence if I come back to that application and ask you to reopen it, so to speak. Then I think what I will commit to you today, and this is, I think, a compromise on my part, is that if we can agree that the southern field and what I will call the eastern field, which is where we did do the sieve analysis on the next to the only hole that was in dispute in that eastern field, if we can agree that the southern and the eastern fields are in good shape for loamy sand, I will agree that to the extent we're going to use the western field, are we all on the same page about which are which?
Yes,
two
I think
fields? Yeah,
so.
okay, good. So if we agree that the southern and eastern, we're in agreement on soil type, I will agree that on the western field, and this will be whether it's a single family home use of that area or whether it's the 32 home larger 3-field system that we're reviewing. I will agree that we will do it your way. We will go back and we'll do it your way. And whatever your way results in, we will design that third field to whatever standards. And it's possible, to be honest, if we go to 3 single families down there, as I would like, that western field, it's possible if we have the room, depending on how all the engineering goes, to have 3 separate systems down there. We might just design it to sandy loam and not bother to continue to dispute that particular field. So I think I've laid out what my proposal is. You all agree that we're in good shape on the southern and the eastern. I will agree to your methodology, or I'll just cave to your proposed soil type or to your assessed soil type for that western field. And we'll stay the application, hopefully forever, but who knows? We don't know, kind of where we're gonna get to. But I will, in good faith, go forward and try to provide you with local compliant plans for both septics and wells for 5 single-family homes on 14 acres. And that's my proposal that I think gets us out of this terrible loop that we've been in for about 3 or 4 hours, if you include the other night and today.
I'll say that I'm comfortable with the southern field. I'm not comfortable with the eastern field. It's still, I know for you that's frustrating because you're relying on the sieve analysis. I'm relying on the observations that the agent made in the field for both the northern fields. And I realize that you are offering compromises of other sorts, but again, I took that oath to uphold my duties to enforce the regulations, and I feel that I can't do it with the information that we have, and the discrepancies in the information as we perceive discrepancies, and then now with this guidance too, that I could therefore trade off your compromise for a more strict adherence to Title V guidance and
So let me
requirements.
just make sure, Daryl, that the full board understands what we have on that eastern field, okay? We have, I believe, 3 test holes in the eastern field. 2 of them were agreed to be loamy sand, and the third one was the disputed one, which was, I believe, 5511. I'm working from memory here. Julie, you got it in front of you. It's 5511, I believe. Yeah. So we had 2 holes dug that were, there was agreement between Mark and Deshang that they showed loamy sand. And we had a third one that was in dispute. And on 5511, we did a sieve analysis very near, and that sieve analysis told us that the soil was loamy sand. And so I believe that leaves us without dispute on that field, and that the dispute we have left, and that's why I don't think of it as a real compromise. I believe we have the data to get to what I'm suggesting. And I hear you, Daryl. I would appreciate hearing from the rest of the board as to whether we can get there on this or
And
not.
actually, before we go to the rest of the board, Mark, can you just, since I don't have any maps open right now,
Yes,
and I'm gonna look for the table,
yeah,
can you address that?
yeah, 5511, we had Loomy Sand to Sandy Loom. I have the results right here, and that I pulled right off Form 11 that Deschang provided, the first document ever to the ZBA. So, and I have pictures of these sites, these soil tests. You'll see that the top part is the Loomy Sand, and then you get into the more restrictive layer, I'll call it, the C layer. And that layer is the sandy loam. So, and the pictures pretty much indicated as well. So, and as I mentioned, maybe at this meeting and another meeting, Title V requires you go with the more conservative route. And we reviewed this prior on another site that the board had agreed to on the same applicant. So that is 5511 does go from Loomy Sand to Sandy Loam, per my notes and per the Form 11 provided by the engineer.
But not the engineer's notes, because the engineer caved to your desire in that phone call on September 15th. We have the information that tells us that's what happened. The
respect
engineer's notes say loamy sand for hole 5511. Your notes clearly say sandy loam. I agree with you on that. But to say that we agreed that day, we definitely did not. We ended up caving to what you said, much like we did on Greenwood, because it no longer was worth fighting over. We gave in. And the same thing happened here when we went to do the larger system. We wanted all of it to be loamy sand, and that's what we submitted on the revised Form 11. And then when you disputed it, we agreed in that late December meeting, and I sent the emails that showed that we agreed to do the test to make the determination. And we went out and we did the test, and it's very clearly loamy sand in hole S2. Which is someone has kindly put up on the screen for me.
Madam Chair, I would ask, first, I do not remember having a conversation with the engineer said I'm going to cave and just change it. Second, most important, the engineer submitted Form 11 as the official first document on the ZBA list farm road homes, and that was done prior to any changes until the septic plan was designed and submitted to us, from my knowledge and belief. That's my side of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other board members want to comment?
If I can just.
No, I want the board members first, because we haven't had, they've barely spoken relatively, so.
Oh, there's my reason. Okay, there's my reason. The fact that we've put these in conjunction, I think is going to make us continue to spin. I think we take them as separate. The request is to stay the permit. I think if we have a written request to stay the permit, and I think it needs to be in writing, then I would be completely comfortable honoring that. I think the rest of.
May I send that right now, Julie? Does that work for you, so that I'll send it in writing and you can vote on it now?
That would have, if we have that in writing and the rest of the board agrees to stay the permit until it is brought up again or withdrawn, then I think that's perfectly fine. As far as the I think that if we try to resolve the rest of this, we're going to continue down this path right now. And if what you're saying is this is being stayed for the potential of a different project, again, that's not before the board, but then we'll come back to this, the soil.
And that's why I was trying to, in the spirit of compromise, because I believe I think we've agreed on the southern field. And I thought we had agreement on the western field, and it was the eastern field. And it was really only the western field that was left disputed. I mean, I'm compromising. I'm saying I'll do it your way on that last disputed, however you want to do it. But I need to have an understanding of what I have to do. And, if we keep going around and around, Julie, it just gets hard.
It is going to be hard. When we spoke last week, it was talking about the southern part was okay, and the northern, or the eastern plus the western, was where we wanted to do the further testing. So I don't recall ever discussing that northern area being cut in two and treated separately.
Well,
I don't remember that.
It's designed that way.
I understand I know there's 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C. I understand that. I'm just saying, when we talked about it last week, we never made that distinction between east and west. So frankly, I haven't had a chance to go back to the data and revisit it and reevaluate it. So this is right.
It would help if I explain the locations a little bit, but I'm not trying to, I agree with Julie. It sounds like today, definitely we are not going to reach an agreement to exactly how to proceed it. But I respect what everybody's opinion, right? But I think Bob should have his right if he wanted to state the current permit, move on with the single family house. That's probably the rest of things will resolve it around the way. And so we can only, so if you look at
I think it's completely within your right to stay the project. That is your choice. I see no reason to object to that.
Right.
But
I'm just trying to determine what we can agree on for a change, so that we can kind of put some things aside.
Okay, I didn't know if you were bundling the stay with the other issues that you brought up.
Yeah,
Are they
I was trying to frame a compromise for all of us, so that we would define where we have some agreement today, and we can put those things aside, and then we can focus on where we don't have agreement. And I'm trying to kind of articulate that and have it be a part of my proposal to stay the application, and not put you in the position of denying it, and not put me in the position of litigating it. Neither of them is good. And we know that. And so I'm just trying to say, okay, what can we agree on? So we agree the southern field is loamy sand. And I thought we had agreement that the eastern field was loamy sand. And I'm trying to put those aside. And then I'm willing to say, okay, we'll do it your way on the western field. Whatever, I'll either design it to sandy loam, or I'll test it your way, one or the other. And both of those, I think, are acceptable to you.
So, but maybe, so that means, so this part is not this in dispute. Here, if you look in here, technically in the northeastern part have 4 test pit there. 3 are loamy sand, agreed with the Mark's notes. So this is the 111 as dispute as Mark's notes as a called a loamy sand to sandy loam. And we did take a soil sample next to that test pit disputed. And so we did get loamy sand. That's what, and we have a perk right there. It's 4 minutes per inch, actually. So if you can see, so again, as I said, so we have a 3 minutes here, which is very close to it. So, and then the rest of, so there's so many here. I'm not saying you agreed with it, so as Bob may remembered, and I would just say, let's look at the data here. Can you agree? If it's not, let's move on. I don't, because if you don't agree, we cannot resolve it. If you agree, let's call a day and then moving on as one way or the other. You can comment up. If it's not, Bob, I think we understand the situation now, so we just have to technically deal with it, right? So because it's not going
so
to.
let's let the Desheng, let's let the board discuss this.
Right, after you see all this, how many tests that we had it here? So 1, 2, 3, 4. All these 3 are normally sent as agreed. And this is the one it disputed, but we also had a soil sample shows loamy sand. That's the basic information, and the soil is taken at 6 feet deep. So that in that representative as I can tell. But again, so I'm not even going to because it can't. So that's a basic fact. If we can agree, we move on. Not we will. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. We will as technical person, if doing a single family house, I probably can one way or the other. So.
Do any other board members have something to add on this particular east-west issue? Or I'll take Mary's comment if you're still thinking. Okay, Mary.
Thank you, Daryl. Just a couple comments. Clarifying question I had is, could somebody tell me what the latest Form 11 date is? I saw one on the website that was dated back in April of 2021. So if you don't have the answer handy now, I can follow up with the agent afterwards or with the.
I believe, Mary, it's January of 2022.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There's 2 parts of it. One is the day that did the soil testing. There's 2 probably days. One is April 2021. One is
November of 21.
right.
But the latest report, that I thought that's what you were asking, Mary. The latest report is from January of 22.
Okay, thank you. 2022. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the second question I have is that I certainly appreciate the sort of stalemate that you guys are at, and I appreciate the willingness to find a solution, but I don't think a 5-house project is currently before the board. And I personally think it would be inappropriate to, make any sort of decision on that based on the fact that other abutters haven't been notified. I don't think there's been a updated NOI submitted for that project. And I think that the prior, I believe the prior septics that were proposed initially had been withdrawn. So to me, that feels like a very new application that's not currently before you. And again, I appreciate the struggle that you guys have to get some agreement on this, but those are my comments. Thank you.
So Mary, I would just to help clarify what I'm talking about now. I mentioned the 5-home project so that the board would have context, but all I'm asking for today, okay, is a stay and an agreement on the data that we have collected on the 32-home project, right? And I think we all would agree that the data is the data, whether it's for 32 homes or whether it's for 5 homes, the holes are the holes. But I am only focused on the data that was done for the 32-home project. And frankly, if the 5-home project were to go forward, we would almost certainly need to do an additional test hole or 2 down there to help clarify the overall situation. So I completely respect what you're saying, that we should not be talking about the 5-home project. And I only mention that to set context. Everything I'm asking this board to consider right now is relative to the 32-home project. So we're in agreement.
Well, and Daryl, if I could add, I think if the data is submitted and it's not disputed, then that data is acceptable to the board. Then I don't think you need to necessarily vote on that. or make a decision on it today. Just, recognize that there is some undisputed data. I think that's fair.
It's only one 5511. That's the only one we do have a civil analysis data. You need to vote on that, but one way or the other, if you voted yes, it's okay, it's not, if it's not, so we will, so. I think let's probably move on, otherwise we'll tangle too much. It's not going to finish it, so.
I'll interject, Daryl, to the board. I think I think there's an agreement in the southern fields, and I don't have agreement in the western and eastern fields. And again, it goes back to the whole representative sample, SIB, blah 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 blah, that I had discussed before. And so my agreement is with the southern field. I am not in agreement with the western and eastern field. And I absolutely would entertain a stay in writing. And to Mary's point, we are only deliberating on the application before us.
And Mark, before you comment, I do have a question, and I'm assuming that given that the site, provided that the site does not become disturbed in some all new way in the future, or between now and whenever a septic system is built there, that these test pits could be applied to other system designs.
Darrell, I think that's an appropriate question, and I'll explain why. I haven't seen where they want to locate the new soil absorption systems, the new leaching areas. So if they're going to meet our requirement,
Okay, yeah.
They're required to have at least 3 depots and 2 perks per soil absorption area for each one of the 5 homes that are being presented. So until I see that, there will be a need for additional testing if they don't have 3 depots and
Correct.
2 percolation tests as the minimum.
We agree with that, but
I just
obviously we're
wanted
not talking about that tonight.
That's why I just
I
want to make
wanted
sure
to just
we're
But
talking.
what Claire
that
did say
data,
is
excuse me, let me just finish with Mark.
these holes are good forever. That's the important point that she made.
That is correct, unless the Darrell, may I go? I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, yes.
So that is correct, Bob. As long as the regulations don't change.
Sure.
And again, you can use what you have there and you might need additional testing is all I'm trying to say.
Yes, and
Because
we
we don't
agree
know
that that's a real likelihood, to be
So
honest,
in
for
general-
3 homes. For 2, probably not, but if we did 3, then yes. Agreed.
So in
Yes,
general,
but-
if you're going to approve an area, you want to make sure it has the sufficient testing
Yep.
for new construction meeting local Board of Health regulations. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we're not at all addressing what those future systems might look like, just the sources of information
Yeah,
that might be
correct.
used in developing them.
We don't even know what they'll look like, so we can't talk about it.
Right. Okay, Steve or Diana?
Yeah, I mean, looking at that map, it looked like there were a couple points that we were in dispute, but the southern area, everybody, it sounds like is in agreement with the findings there. And I'd be fine with staying this current application.
And by the way, the email should be in your email boxes, the written request.
Received, Bob.
Thank you.
I think I've got a good understanding of what we're proposing, especially with the stay. What I'm not really clear on, and again, I'm sure it has to do with the details of the 5-home proposal. There isn't one at this point. Is that correct? Or has
I'm
something
sorry,
been
Steve,
put
if you were
together?
asking me a question, I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, the 5-home proposal, that we don't have a proposal yet on that. That's just
No.
what we're talking about here.
Conceptually, yes.
Conceptually, got it. So we don't have anything we can look at. So again, trying to split out what we've been discussing. It
Sure.
seems like if we're gonna vote, we'll vote on the stay.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So do you want to move ahead with the stay then, voting on that? I guess just acknowledging that we've received it. I haven't read the document. But I don't know if someone else has had a chance to read it.
Would you like me to read it out loud, Daryl?
Either that or Jessica, if she's got it.
Farm Road Homes respectfully requests a stay on the Title V application for Farm Road Homes until further notice. Thanks, Bob Murchison. Received at 4:39 p.m.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept? I don't know if it's honoring or implementing the stay for the Farm Road Homes.
How about
project.
granting?
Grant?
Granting
Sure.
the stay.
Yes. Granting the stay.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Steve, you can go first again.
Steve Constantine, I vote aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. All right, and then the others, I don't know if it's really a vote issue because it's sort of out of the ordinary and we don't have future plans, but do we want to acknowledge that a sense of the board, provide a sense of the board that we are in agreement that the soil testing for the southern area is acceptable? Mark, would that be how you might?
Yeah, it's a very generic statement, but is in agreement with, as long as it was in agreement with my soil test logs, and that's basically the statement. Again, as I
Maybe we
noted,
should refer to the area for, sorry to interrupt, but maybe we should refer just to the test pits that are in that area, because we don't know how they're going to be divided up in the future, potentially across different systems. That would tie it more to the pits than to the space, which might give better flexibility for the design to come, right?
yes, and as I
So it
noted,
encompasses.
yeah, and there'll probably be additional tests required for each individual septic system, and obviously when those are done, then the final results will determine this, the design rate.
Okay, so maybe we want to term this more as the board confirms its acceptance of the soil analyses in the test pits that are currently located in the area designated as, sorry, I just never remember whether it's area 3 or C. I think it's 1, 2, and 3, but do you recall, Mark,
You
how
may
it's
want
referenced?
as referenced on the plan. It's divided into 3 separate areas
Mhm.
of distribution of the effluent. So it would be, if you're looking at the plan, it would be on the bottom of the T, I believe is what you're looking at.
Right, but I thought it
1,
had
2, 3. It is 1, 2, 3.
information or something.
1, 2, 3. Yes. The fifth,
Yes.
the fields is it's subdivided into 1, 2, 3 as dedicated
Okay.
to each pump.
All right, so noted as on the most current plan, the date of that, I'm forgetting, March 16th, something like that. Anyway, so Jessica or Mark, if you could find that and include it just in the record. Otherwise, for now, the motion will note that the most recently submitted plan.
March 13th,
Okay.
latest update. Okay.
So would anyone like to move that motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none? And Steve, you can go first.
Steve Constantine, I vote aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. All right, were there any other issues on the table that, I mean, aside from the myriad, but in terms of immediate? Okay, and then Bob let us know, and DeShang, whatever the plans are for your next steps so that we can be ready.
Yeah.
And
We hope to have plans to you next week for the two homes closest to Farm Road, which you've seen. Like I said, there've been some minor adjustments, not actually to the septic system itself, but we worked on the things that Mark had asked us to work on, and we moved the lot lines just a touch, but it's more or less what it was when you saw it, whenever that was, 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And we expect to have those two to you soon, like I said, next week, and then it'll be a little bit of time because the septic systems down in the valley we've spent so much time on today will need to be obviously completely redesigned.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
do we-
I'm glad we were able to get to a better place. Thank you all.
Certainly. We're always trying, believe it or not. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
So happy July 4th.
Yes, you too. All right, I'll go.
Great holiday, everyone.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Voting for adjourning?
Diana Hook, aye.
Okay,
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Steve Constantine, aye.
okay, great.
Happy Fourth, everybody.
Happy
Yes,
Independence
happy
Day.
4th, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.